Chapter 19 The Thorn Stuck in My Side, Part 3. I walked past the mares in a quick tempo and exited the room, retreating further into the castle. Twilight, Applejack, and Fluttershy were too stunned by what had just happened to respond at first. Their shocked stares were still glued to the spear protruding from the door, but they soon snapped to their senses and followed me. The second they met up with me, they assaulted me with questions. I paid them little attention. There were bigger things on my plate to deal with first. My own mind was still struggling to comprehend what I saw. Just seeing Thorn from afar had me rattled. He was supposed to be captured, not running around rampant through the forest hunting us. This complicated things immensely. If Thorn was to somehow cross to this side of the chasm,
then you would know exactly what to do,
the voice interrupted.
Think, Hunter. You have lived in this castle for nearly a month, hiding from the ponies, waiting in fear that they might knock on your front door. You planned for situations like this.
Yes, keyword being planned, I thought back. I never had a chance or the reason to test them at the time. Besides, this is different.
How so?
I looked down the hallway behind me in paranoia. Because if these wolves catch me, they aren't going to arrest me. They aren't going to give me a trial. They will kill me.
Higher stakes don't change the game, Hunter,
the voice said. Maybe not, I replied. But they sure do add more stress. Hunter! I was jarred out of my mental conversation. My head snapped down to my side in shock to find a rather irritated Twilight. Could you stop ignoring us and answer our questions? Where are we going? Just to a special room that I know, I answered, hoping that my tone didn't sound too urgent. It's real secure and easy to defend. Only one way in and out, assuming the wolves don't magically sprout wings since we last saw them. Not that I have any objections, partner, Applejack said as she trotted up to my side. But why bother? Twilight told us about what you did with the bridge, and although I personally think it was a bit extreme, we're still serving them Pinky's secret stash of cookies. The faint howl of a wolf filled the air. We stopped dead in our tracks and listened. Whatever made that noise was still far off, but it served as a reminder of the danger that was looming outside. I waited a few seconds after it faded before saying, "A little extra protection never hurts." An odd tensity overshadowed us as we continued through the corridors. The silence that followed the howl was thick and hard to break. I gave my company a quick once-over. Fluttershy and Applejack both appeared worried, though the latter was doing a better job concealing it. Fluttershy walked close to my right, mildly shaking. Her eyes were trained straight ahead of us, and her wings were slightly extended, ready to lift her into the air at the first unwelcome noise. Applejack was on the other side of Fluttershy. Her ears were perked up, twitching every now and then as she strained to listen for any other sounds. She bore a deadpan expression, but every now and then she would check left, right, and on rare occasions, behind us. Twilight was unreadable. She was at a respectable distance to my left. Unicorn didn't appear tense, not even a little bit unnerved. She was calm and silent, like an instructor observing her students. To be honest, it was almost as maddening as the situation outside. I felt as if she was just waiting for me to slip up. "Alright, we're almost there," I announced as we reached the base of the staircase. "Just got one tower to climb and we'll be there." As we ascended up the spiral stairs, I traced my old and familiar stone wall with my fingers. That was chipping away at me with every step I took. My faith in our security was slowly dwindling. What if I overlooked something? What if Thorn did manage to find another way to cross the gap that I didn't know of? These very well could have been the last few hours of my life. No, I thought as I mentally slapped myself. I wasn't about to let myself think like that. I refused to let myself think like that. Doing so would be counterproductive at the moment. These mares had put their trust in me. The last thing they needed was a leader with shaky confidence. Two wooden doors greeted us when we reached the top of the stairs, still closed from when the foals and I were still there. This was it. Our mostly safe haven was just on the other side of these doors. I placed my hands on the handles, took in a deep breath to clear my mind, and pushed the doors open. The throne room was no different from the countless of other times I'd walked into it. Same old columns, same dusty windows, same gray color, and same fractured throne. As the mares dispersed into the room, I wandered over to a nearby window. The moon was still shining brightly in the night sky, and slowly making its descent towards the western horizon. I had learned a few weeks ago that the moon rose and fell in the night, similarly to the sun during the day. At the time, it was just more insanity to cope with, but now the glowing satellite was more like a timer, slowly ticking away the seconds until the moon finally set. I guess that we had roughly 2 hours until the moon set and the sun rose. A gray fog suddenly obscured the moon, breaking my train of thought. I took a step away from the window in curiosity and found that it was just the condensation from my breath. A small smile found its way to my face despite the current situation, and I playfully let out another deep exhale, watching as the gray cloud of my breath dissipated into the air. That never gets old to me, I thought as I walked to the throne. There was a sound of shattered glass at my feet. When I glanced at my feet, I found the shards of the blue necklace I had so carefully pieced together scattered across the floor. I had accidentally kicked them. The sight was rather disappointing. It took me some time to get them arranged perfectly. The three mares were staring at the source that caused the sudden break in the silence, namely me. When my eyes finally looked up to and met theirs, I gave a small, apologetic chuckle and skirted around the debris. I plopped down on the cushioned throne, slouched to a more comfortable position, and sighed, releasing another foggy cloud of breath into the air. Fluttershy, Applejack, and Twilight were still watching me, almost expectantly. I shuffled uncomfortably underneath their gaze. After a few awkward seconds ticked by, they congregated together with their backs turned towards me. I could hear them whispering between themselves, but couldn't discern just what they were saying.
What do you suppose they are discussing?
Not sure, I murmured.
It's nice of them to exclude you from the group,
the voice bitterly remarked. I frowned a little. I'm sure they have their reasons. Almost on cue, the huddle broke. Todd broke off from the group and trotted up to me. And I suppose we're about to find out, I added. So, Hunter, Twilight began, now that you've brought us here, what's the plan? I hesitated. When should I tell them about Thorn? It was wrong of me to be withholding this kind of information, but I feared that they would lose their trust in me, thinking that I had carelessly led us to our demise. Fear was becoming a better motivator than guilt. Besides, Twilight only asked if I had a plan. She didn't appear curious in the spear, at least not yet. And I did have a plan, albeit a loose one. For now, it was practically held together by a thin string of hope and luck. The plan is still the same, I explained. We're going to wait up here until things calm down a bit outside. Twilight's scrutinizing stare was burning in my body, whether she meant it or not. I kept my eyes fixed at my worn shoes to avoid her gaze, and struggled to form my words better under the pressure. Then we can slip out of the castle and head back to Ponyville. I'd recommend that we wait until sunrise, at least, I added. It's only a few hours away, and we could probably use the rest. Plus, it would probably be safer to travel if we could see where we were going. My eyes stayed glued to the ground the entire time I spoke. Even when I finished, I didn't dare lift them to meet Twilight. I feared that she might find some hint of fear in them, assuming she didn't already pick up on the uncertainty in my tone. A few seconds of silence ticked by. I was beginning to feel hopeful that she had bought it, that she wouldn't press for more details. Then, Todd asked the one thing that probably summed up my thoughts. But you don't think it's that simple, do you? I drew in a deep breath and sighed. No, I don't, I admitted, shaking my head. Those wolves aren't going to leave us alone anytime soon. The moment we step foot out of this castle, they'll be right at our heels. The way I see it, one of two things will happen. Either Princess Una can swoop in and save the day, Or... My voice trailed off. I didn't want to say the other option out loud, and it was bad enough just thinking it. Or what? Twilight pressed. I swallowed down the lump in my throat. Or the Timberwolves managed to find another way to enter the castle, I grimly stated, and we'll have to find some way to defend ourselves. But the princess doesn't even know we're here! Fluttershy exclaimed, panic all too evident in her voice. She thinks we're in Ponyville! How will she find us in time? Not to mention she probably still has her hooves full with that Thorn fella, Applejack added. And I reckon she ain't gonna notice we're missing until it's too late. Assuming she has Thorn captured, I blurted out. It was a rather dark comment, and it was easy to take it that way. But oddly enough, I smiled at the thought. Luna was a strong pony, and she didn't strike me as the type to quit after the first mishap. No, she was probably still out there, hunting down Thorn while he was hunting us. It was almost laughable. In some twisted way, Thorn's presence here might have just assured our safety. Unfortunately, Twilight didn't have the same mindset as me. And what is that supposed to mean? She demanded, offended by what she must have taken as an insult towards her princess. Of course, the fact that Twilight asked the question only made me more excited. It felt good to know something she didn't. I'm just saying, I smugly announced. Luna is just one pony. A strong pony, but one pony nonetheless. With what little we know about Thorn, we can't rule out the possibility that he slipped out of her grasp. But Luna is a princess, Twilight stressed. Not to mention she already had nearly a dozen guards with her at the time. And Thorn is a crazed timberman who is obsessed with hunting me down, I countered. Plus, he had Timberwolves. What's your point? Would y'all two give it a rest? Applejack interjected. We got enough on our plates without the both of you getting at each other's necks. I glanced up to see the farm pony trying to console quivering Fluttershy. The poor mare's teal eyes were filled with panic. All this crazy talk is getting Fluttershy jitterier than a June bug. I sighed and slowly shook my head. If Fluttershy was panicked just by mentioning the possibility that Thorn is still out there, then I didn't want to even imagine what she would do once she found out it was true. To make matters worse, I didn't think I could hold up this little act anymore. At least not without it horribly backfiring on me. They needed to know, and they needed to know now, despite whatever my anxiety told me. But what could I do now? Just blurt out that Thorn is following us? No, that would just be too unceremonious. They probably wouldn't believe me, and Fluttershy might get a heart attack. Maybe if I just told one of them? But who? Fluttershy was a big no right off the bat. I couldn't perceive how telling her would help improve this situation. Applejack? My eyes flickered back towards the orange mare. She was rather reliable from what I've come to know of her. She was a good friend, too. But was she a good leader? Every fiber of my being wanted to say yes. But I knew on the inside who the best candidate was in that field. My eyes shifted to Twilight, the same pony who had single-handedly led an entire town against me. The same pony who had organized and strategically placed search parties in the every forest to try to find me, even though most ponies were reluctant to go anywhere near the woods in the first place. The same pony who managed to create a list of chores for me to do every day. No, I thought coldly, I am not about to deliberately give that pony ammunition against me. My thoughts were hollow, though. I was growing weary of holding up this old facade. I desperately wanted to relieve myself of this leadership role I had accidentally plunged myself into, and if shifting the authority to Twilight was the best bet, then so be it. Better more weight fall on her than me. Luckily, the unicorn was still within earshot. Twilight, I whispered briskly. Her ears perked up, and she turned to look at me. I stood up from my throne and motioned her to follow me as I walked over to one of the many windows that lined the walls. She was skeptical at first, but eventually I obliged. By the time she met up with me, I was already staring out the window at the dark expanse of trees that surrounded us. "What do you want?" she bluntly asked. She sounded like she was still irritated from our little debate. It wouldn't make this any easier for me, and for a second I began to have second thoughts, but I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. It was high time I got this weight off my shoulders. I took in a deep breath and sighed, watching as the foggy cloud escaped my mouth and quickly invaded the glass. Look, I said, I know we're not exactly friends by any definition of the word, and if I thought there was a better way, I wouldn't be asking for your help right now. I paused, waiting to see if she had any comments so far. When she gave no response, I continued talking. I know we don't exactly see eye to eye, and if conditions were different, I wouldn't be asking you to do me such a favor. This time my comment earned a curious glance from the unicorn. But I think it's safe to say that neither of us wants to see our friends get worried. Or hurt. I tore my gaze away from the window and looked directly into her purple eyes. I don't care what you think, I said. Fluttershy and Applejack have been kind to me since I was allowed to live in Ponyville. They're my friends too. I'll do just about anything in my power to keep them safe. Hunter? Twilight started, voice filled with uncertainty. What's wrong? I stole a glance back to the center of the room, where Applejack was still trying to calm down Fluttershy. Every fiber of my being cursed Thorn for putting us in this situation. Every fiber of my being cursed myself for not being able to handle this situation. I was never meant to lead, I said distractedly. Just wasn't programmed that way. I can't handle stress well at times. Letting someone else help me or take charge was always an easier solution. Hunter? Twilight repeated, sounding a bit agitated that I wasn't being straightforward. She glared at me with a steely gaze and enunciated her syllable sharply. What happened? My head shook slowly from side to side. You're probably not going to like this, I began. Then again, I wasn't so thrilled when I found out either. After casting one last furtive glance at Applejack and Fluttershy to make sure they weren't eavesdropping, I began to spill out everything I knew to Twilight. I tried to remain very subtle about it, but when I revealed who was lurking outside the front door, subtlety was practically tossed out the window. We struggled to keep our voices down. Applejack must have overheard some portions of the conversation, but she probably figured that Twilight and I were just having another one of our heated arguments. That's not to say she would have been far from the truth. Twilight wasn't particularly pleased that I was withholding information, and she didn't hesitate to show it. Why didn't you tell us about this earlier? She hissed. What are we supposed to do now? Just wait here and pretend that nothing is wrong? Hey, last time I checked, it wasn't my fault that Thorn's waiting outside, I snapped back. Your princess was supposed to have him captured by now. Twilight's face screwed up in agitation. I thought I could see the fire burning in her eyes and smoke escaping from her ears. Are you saying this is all the princess's fault? She demanded. No, I'm not saying this is anybody's fault. I shook my head in exasperation. Already I was beginning to regret this. Look, this might not in all actuality change anything, I explained. This still might just be a matter of waiting. The princess is bound to still be looking for him. If he's here, then Princess Luna can't be too far behind. Maybe she'll get to him before he gets to us. But what's your plan in case Thorn does get to us first? That's just it, I sighed. I don't know. I do have a plan, but... My voice trailed up, and my eyes lingered out the window and down below. A small courtyard lay at the base of this particular spire, probably 6 floors down. Its stony layout virtually dominated by unkempt vegetation. It was a rather long way down there, one filled with various twists and turns if you didn't know where to go. I never had much of a way to test it. I looked back at Twilight. Her ever studious eyes were trained on some mysterious object that only she could see. Her brow furrowed as she digested the information I just fed her. Why are you telling this to me? She eventually asked. When I couldn't come up with an immediate response, she lifted her head and stared me in the eyes. Me, of all ponies. Why aren't you telling this to Applejack or Fluttershy? Because, Twilight, as much as I hate to admit it, you're more qualified to lead than I am. You can make nearly an entire town overcome their silly fear of a forest and hunt a single man down. Leading 2 ponies and a human out of a castle and back home should be a breeze for you. Me? I scoffed and glanced out the window. I can barely lead a handful of foals out of this damn forest without having to rush one to the hospital. A small frown tugged at my lips. What good am I in this situation? There were a few seconds of silence while I waited for Twilight's response. It was in those silent seconds that I felt so afraid and so vulnerable. I feared that she would say no, that she would leave the burden of responsibility on my shoulders. Why would she say yes? Why should she say yes? She had no reason to agree. She couldn't have cared less for my well-being. And here I was, being completely open to her with my weaknesses. I might as well have given her a scalpel to dissect me with. It probably wouldn't be as painful as the weight of failure. I suppose it's just natural to say I was surprised when she finally said, "All right, I'll help you." One of my eyebrows shot up, and I gave her a funny look. If everything you said is true, then we're all in danger, Twilight continued. I want to keep my friends safe, and if working with you is the best way to go, then so be it. The enemy of my enemy, eh? I commented. Her response was satisfactory enough. I probably had the same outlook on the situation. So, what do you say? Think we can set aside our differences and work together for our friends' safety? For our friends' safety, Twilight nodded. I shuffled uncomfortably. The air around us felt awkward, as if nature itself felt uneasy about the unnatural alliance that we had just created. You said you had a plan? Partially, I answered. It's kinda half-baked, and the details are a little sketchy. Well, we won't be able to do anything with it if you don't tell me, now will we? She asked matter-of-factly. Touché, I muttered. All right, then. Here's the gist of it. Fluttershy and I sat alone in the large, cold throne room a little while later. Twilight and Applejack had left roughly an hour ago to get a better feel of the castle. We were all originally supposed to go together, but my painkillers were beginning to lose their effect, and I wanted to heed Redheart's warning about walking too much. Fluttershy offered to stay behind and keep me company. There was no way of knowing whether or not Twilight was going to let Applejack in on the plan. It probably wouldn't have been such a bad idea, actually. Technically, Twilight didn't have to even mention Thorn either. Then again, Applejack probably deserved to know just what we were up against. Heck, we all deserved to know what we were up against. I had tried countless times to figure out some way to tell Fluttershy, but every time I worked up the courage to speak to her, and she looked at me with her deep, trusting teal eyes, I couldn't bring myself to say it. I couldn't bring myself to frighten her, even if it was for the best. Fluttershy was curled up and resting on what I hoped was a comfortable part of the stone floor not too far from me. I had offered the cushioned throne to her a few minutes into Twilight and Applejack's absence, but she refused and strongly insisted that I take it since I was hurt and needed it more. With little to no means of entertainment or anything else to occupy me with, it took all that I had to fight back sleep as it slowly crept upon me. As much as I would have loved to simply drift into slumber and escape this nightmarish reality, a small part of me figured that it wouldn't make a good impression if Twilight and Applejack were to return to find me fast asleep. Fortunately, I wasn't running on steam just yet. One of the reasons I was still awake was due to the couple of hours I spent napping before the festival even started. My yellow companion, on the other hand, was a different story. She must have been up for nearly a whole day now. It showed, too. I insisted that she get some rest, but she was adamant in staying awake with me. Oh, no, I couldn't do that. I came up here to keep you company, she reminded with tired eyes, stifling a yawn at the same time. It wouldn't be very nice if I were to fall asleep on you. Yeah, well, it wouldn't be very nice of me if I were to keep you up, I countered. It's fine, really, Fluttershy assured. She nestled her head into her forelegs. Her eyes were struggling to stay open and let alone fix on me. I can stay awake. She yawned. I smiled, realizing that this was a pointless battle. No matter what I said, I doubted that I could argue her to sleep. Besides, she looked ready to doze off at any second, regardless of what she said. Actually, just looking at her was making me a bit drowsy. I readjusted into a more comfortable position in hopes that it would keep me awake. A small clink sounded at my feet and echoed in the quiet room as I shifted in the chair. Curious, I leaned forward to investigate. To my surprise, I found a small, dusty bottle laying on its side, rolling around as I due to the accidental kick. My hand subconsciously reached down and plucked it up for further examination. A small sound also caught Fluttershy's attention. Her head lifted up from her legs and she rubbed its hard eye with a hoof. "What's that?" she groggily asked. I shook the vial a little and listened as the small amount of liquid inside sloshed around. "It's Sakura's potion," I answered. It was amusing to see it again. I wasn't sure why, though. If anything, it would have been more surprising if I didn't see it again. "You mean that medicine you gave me?" Fluttershy asked. I simply nodded in response. Most of my attention was trained on the dusty vial. Out of my peripheral vision, I saw her yellow and pink body get back up and head towards me. "You should drink it," she eventually said. She had a sincere smile on her face as she pushed the vial closer to me. "I mean, you look so hurt, and the potion will make you all better, right?" My brow furrowed as the gears in my head slowly began to grind. "Well, yes," I replied distractedly. I brushed the fine film of dust off of its surface. But I'd rather hold on to this for later, just in case something happens. "Like what?" "Come on, Hunter, you can do this," I thought to myself. "Just tell her. She needs to know." "Well, you know..." My voice faltered yet again as I tried to meet her curious eyes. My words choked up in my throat, threatening to suffocate me until a select few managed to spill the way out. "Something could always pop up on the way to Ponyville. I mean, with the Timberwolves and all, we can't really say that everything is going to be smooth sailing from here on out. This potion can completely heal someone in a matter of minutes." I gave the bottle a little shake for extra emphasis. "We need to save this for when we need it most." "But you need it right now," Fluttershy argued. "Please, Hunter, I don't like seeing you hurt like this." My left hand subconsciously raised and hovered over the 4 gashes on my face. My gaze was locked on the vial in my right hand as my mind debated on whether or not I should drink it. The pleading look Fluttershy gave me wasn't helping me make a decision either. "Alright. Fine," I resigned. "I'll drink some of it. Just a sip, nothing more. I still want to hold on to this." Fluttershy beamed happily at my submission, "But only if you promise to get some shut-eye. I don't want you to perennially pass out from exhaustion when we're running again," I added with a smile. "But I could never do that," she protested. "You'll be alone and..." "Trust me, I'll survive," I assured her, as I stood up and moved her onto the throne. She tried to resist at first, but she was too tired to put up much of a fight. And with the cushioned seat beckoning her with open arms, it was even harder for her to say no. I rested myself at the base of the throne, leaning my head against the stony armrest so that the doors were in my field of view. "You being here is all the company I need. I don't mind if you're awake or asleep." Fluttershy shifted in the seat, tucking her legs underneath her body and folding her wings close to her sides. Her eyelids were struggling to stay open again. She stifled another quiet yawn. "Well, if you say you're okay with it..." "Go to sleep, Fluttershy," I smiled. "I'll wake you when something happens." I didn't hear a response. After a few minutes, I heard her silently snoozing. I eyed the vial in my hand again. It was time for me to hold up my end of the deal. I tore off the cork lid and raised it to my mouth. "Only a sip," I reminded myself. The potion was as bitter as ever, perhaps even more. I began to wonder if it was possible that the potion had expired since I had last taken it, and worried over the potential effects that it might have. But I quickly dispelled such thoughts from my head and tried to take joy in the fact that I only took a few drops as opposed to the whole mouthful like that, like usual. It wouldn't be enough to heal me, or not completely heal me anyway. At most it would just quell the pain, but that would be more than enough for the time being. I searched around me, grabbed some loose vine, and tied the vial to one of the belt loops of my slacks. The result was rather odd and bulky, but I preferred it over carrying it with my own hands. If worst came to worst and we wound up running for our lives, I didn't trust myself to hold on to it. I craned my neck back to see the little sleeping Pegasus and smiled. Her head was nestled into her forelegs again. Her long pink mane shrouded most of her yellow face from my view, but I could still spy a smile on her lips from between the pink curtains. Her body rose and fell in accordance to her relaxed breaths. Sweet dreams, my little pony, I whispered softly. My eyes shifted back to the door, and I let out a sigh. Because it's a nightmare out here. The next half hour was spent twiddling my thumbs and trying not to fall asleep. It goes without saying that I was having some trouble with that last little bit. With little to nothing to occupy myself with, I had to settle with just sitting there and staring at the front door, wondering when Applejack and Twilight would return, or what I will do when I get back to Ponyville, or when the Timberwolves would find another entrance. I tried to keep my mind from wandering in that last direction, though, and instead focused on Ponyville. A smile crept upon my lips as my mind delved deeper into the little fantasy I had constructed. I could almost picture it. I could see Lyra galloping up to me, who was worried sick because of my absence. I could see all the town's ponies whooping and hollering in joy that this whole fiasco was over with. I could see Thorn and his wolves no longer being a threat. I could see peace and happiness and tranquility. And then I heard a howl that jarred me out of my dream. The breaking sounds were so abrupt that I jumped a bit. A small series of barking accompanied it, but they were getting softer. A small part of me was hopeful that the Timberwolves were retreating, but I knew better than to hold on to that thought. There was no way on earth that Thorn was giving up just yet. He was probably trying to lure us out of the castle with false hope. I strained my ears, listening as the sound of the Timberwolves grew quieter and quieter. After a few seconds, the howling and barking faded away completely. I stood up from the ground, wandered over to a window, and looked out into the forest. "What are you up to, Thorn?" I thought out loud. Everything was still. There was no movement around the trees surrounding the castle, at least none that I could see from my angle. This very could have been a legitimate retreat from the Timberwolves. Who knows? Maybe Princess Luna finally arrived and was chasing them away. It was impossible to tell, though, and not knowing was making me antsy. My train of thought was interrupted by a loud and familiar pop. I turned around to see Twilight and Applejack standing in the middle of the room. A few sparkles of magical residue surrounded them, still fading away from the teleportation. A large amount of vines and similar vegetation lay behind them. "Did you all hear that?" Applejack asked, and a hopeful smile dominated her face. "That howling and barking? Sounds like them Timberwolves are hightailing it out of here." "Yeah, we heard it." Fluttershy stirred a bit in her rest, but otherwise remained asleep. "Well, I heard it," I corrected. "And I'm still not too sure what to think about it." "Maybe Princess Luna found us?" Twilight offered. "More like she found the Timberwolves," I retorted. "I doubt she knows we're here. She's probably off chasing the Timberwolves wherever they went." "Even still," Applejack pointed out, "that means the coast is clear. We can just pack up and make a break for Ponyville since they're distracted. Shoot, we don't have to worry about your little backup plan no more," she added with a sincere smile. "Really?" I asked in mild amusement and confusion. My eyes shot to Twilight. "So, I take it you told her about Thorn and the plan?" she finished. "Yes, I did. Applejack is my friend, and she needed to know." "Well, that, and it was kind of hard to come up with a good reason as to why we were gathering all of these." Twilight motioned to the pile of plant life behind her. Her eyes fell upon Fluttershy, who was still sleeping soundly on the throne. "So, have you told her yet?" she inquired, nodding towards the napping Pegasus' direction. I hesitated. "Well, no, not really. Believe me, I wanted to, but I just couldn't figure out how to tell her." "Listen, Hunter," Applejack interjected, I'm sure you had good intentions keeping this sort of business secret, but you have to tell us these things. Trust runs both ways. If we trust you to lead us somewhere, we expect you to tell us the truth and not sugarcoat the details. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind next time, I replied. I glanced back out the window and stared at the moon. From my point of view, it appeared to be mere inches above the horizon. It wouldn't be long until sunrise now. In fact, the sky was already becoming lighter in the east. The sun's about to rise, I announced. Should we wait until then? The extra light would be helpful. No, I think we should leave as soon as we can, Twilight answered. We have a clear opening now that the wolves are distracted, and there's no telling how long it will last. Applejack agreed, saying that the sooner we got home the better, and I simply nodded in agreement. Personally, I would have felt more comfortable waiting a bit longer. Something about this whole situation didn't settle well with me. But I was outnumbered 2-1, and I didn't want to start another argument. But, as fate would have it, it was that moment, that very moment we thought we were finally safe, that everything came crashing down. It started as a low creak, and then escalated into a whine. Before we could interpret what the first noise was, a loud crash filled the air, as if something heavy had hit the earth at full force. After the sound died down, everything fell silent. That sounded like a tree, Applejack said quietly, as if she had read our thoughts. I shot her glance. What makes you say that? I demanded. I live on a farm, in case you've forgotten, the mayor deadpanned, and I have an apple orchard probably within spitting distance. Me and my family have experienced our fair share of some nasty storms, and then some, and I reckon I know what a tree sounds like when it falls. But what could have caused it to fall? Twilight asked. There's hardly any breeze and barely a cloud in the sky. She got her answer soon enough, though, as the one sound we all dreaded echoed through the night, loud and clear. The howl of a timber wolf. After the initial panic subsided, Twilight was quick to take charge. Almost immediately she had me and Applejack get to work on the pile of vines. We silently obliged, too shaken to do or say otherwise, and quickly became consumed in the monotonous process of weaving and tying the plant life together. Fluttershy, who had woken up when the tree crashed down, was utterly clueless as to what was going on. Twilight had to fill her in on the details. She told her all about the plan, all about Thorn, all about the danger we were in. I listened in grudging silence as Twilight told her everything I should have and failed to do. It should have been me talking to Fluttershy right now. It should have been me trying to calm her down right now as she began panicking. I was so angry with myself for not doing it sooner, and so ashamed. Regardless of my emotions on the matter, though, I remained silent, swallowing my contempt and continuing the mindless labor. It was a race against time. We worked in complete silence, no one daring to make even a whisper. The Timberwolves had no idea where we were in the castle, and we intended for it to stay like that for as long as possible. After all, it was the only advantage we had at the moment. There was no way of knowing how many Timberwolves were out there, where they were searching, or how thoroughly they were scanning each room. This tower could have been the last structure they checked, just as much as it could have been the next. Every second counted at this point. The work was stressful. The air was filled with the Timberwolves' non-stop yapping, serving as a constant reminder of the danger we were in. Every time any of us accidentally made an audible sound, the entire group made a simultaneous flinch and froze to see if any of the Timberwolves had heard it too. As soon as Fluttershy was up to date, Twilight had her stationed by the windows to keep an eye out for any wolves, while she aided me and Applejack. Her magical prowess was a tremendous help. She was able to weave the planet together at least 5 times faster than Applejack and I. After a few painstakingly long minutes, we had finished our product. I stared at the new pile of handmade rope and flexed my numb fingers. Well, I suppose handmade wouldn't be the correct term, seeing how most of it was manufactured by hooves and magic. Regardless, now is not the time to muse over our accomplishment. It was time to begin the next phase of the plan. I looked up to Twilight. Do you remember what to do? Leave it to me, she answered as she trotted to the middle of the room. Just get ready for the next phase. We're going to have a small window of time once I do this. She took in a deep breath and closed her eyes in concentration. The tip of her horn slowly began to glow. Applejack and I quickly grabbed one end of the rope and tethered it to a pillar adjacent to the window. As soon as we had it fastened, Twilight shouted, "All right, every pony, close your eyes!" A brilliant white light erupted from her horn, flooding the room and escaping out the windows. After a couple of seconds, the light faded away and it was safe to open our eyes again. I'd accidentally taken some friendly fire and had to blink a few times to get the afterimage out of my eyes. "Do you think it worked?" Applejack asked. "Without a doubt," I replied, rubbing my eyes. Thorn to have to be blind to have not seen that. A long hall filled the night for extra confirmation. "Well then," Twilight interjected, "let's reinforce these doors." She turned her head to the two doors, and her horn began to glow in her trademark purple aura. The closed doors lit up in a similar color and then faded back to normal. "I enhanced the lock to be more durable," Twilight explained. "I'm not going to bother sustaining it, though. It will take too much energy. Once the timberwolves break through, they'll be in." How long do you think it will be before they find their way up here?" Fluttershy nervously asked. On cue, a rabid wolf's barking raced up the stairs. There was a heavy thud, and the doors bulged forward slightly before returning to their original shape. "I'd say pretty soon," Twilight commented. "Now, on to the next order of business. Applejack, way ahead of you, Twi," Applejack called out. She positioned herself before the tall window adjacent to the pillar we had tied the rope to. With a powerful buck, she busted most of the glass out of the window, sending a myriad of shards of glass down to the courtyard. We helped her move the pile of rope to the newly made hole and throw it out. I watched as the green mass quickly began to shrink until it ran out of slack. "Well, that's that," Applejack nodded. "When do y'all reckon we should keep going?" The barking had reached a crescendo. I shot a glance at the door. It was bulging, struggling to keep the timberwolves out, but Twilight's magical lock held its ground. Most, if not all, of the timberwolves had to have been waiting impatiently on the other side by the sound of it. "The sooner the better," Twilight said. "It would be best if we got as much of a head start as we can. Hunter, you go first." I obeyed and marched up to the window. I glanced down at the courtyard and saw the rope swinging lazily in the breeze. A small feeling of nausea occupied my stomach, as it was just how high we were and just how close I was to falling, and I took an uneasy step back. "What's the matter, Hunter?" Applejack asked. "You ain't afraid of heights, are you?" "No," I replied, probably more defensively than I intended. "I'm not afraid of heights. It's just that the thought of falling to my death doesn't settle well with me." I turned to where the rope was tied to the pillar and gave an experimental tug. It was secure. I took in a deep breath, looked around the room, and was about to begin my descent when something finally dawned on me. "Actually, Applejack," I said distractedly, "why don't you go first? There's something I want to do before I go." The mare raised an eyebrow at my odd question, but eventually shrugged it off and took the rope. The last image I had of Applejack before I turned around was her mounting on the windowsill, preparing to descend. A distinctive "Yee-haw!" was signified her departure, and faded away as she fell out of earshot. I traipsed around the room, namely the back near the throne, searching for... well, I wasn't sure just what in particular. Something small, I knew that much. Probably small enough that I could stuff inside of my pocket. I also wanted something unique, something I could look at and remember where I got it. Twilight and Fluttershy stood idly by the open window, eyeing my every move with interest. The former made her impatience known by tapping her hoof audibly on the ground. Fluttershy, on the other hand, attempted to discover what I was doing. Hunter, are you looking for something?" she asked. I had circled the sun for the umpteenth time, still having found nothing more interesting than rocks and dust bunnies. I let out a sigh of defeat. Kinda. "Can we help you?" Fluttershy offered. "No." I shook my head. "No, I need to do this one myself." "We don't have time for this," Twilight interjected. She shot a glance out the window before speaking again. "Applejack is already waiting at the bottom. Why can't you just go now?" "It's complicated," I said, hoping that it would suffice for the time being. The look Twilight gave me, however, suggested that I need to come up with something better before she personally chucked me out the window. I cleared my throat and tried again. I mean, I'm not usually the sentimental type, but this place... I gestured at the room for extra emphasis. This place was kind of like a second home to me. It's like my own fortress of solitude. I used to come here every day to escape the chaos outside, and I just realized that this might be the last time I ever see it. I just want something to remember it by. A faint glimmer of light caught my eye. When I searched for the source, I discovered the shards of blue armor scattered across the floor. They must have reflected some of the moonlight. One piece in particular caught my attention. The shard with the crescent moon. I mindlessly wandered over to it, eyes glued on the blue shard as if I was in a trance. Twilight was talking in the background, probably something about the lines of, "We don't have time for this," but my brain tuned her out. I kicked the other shard shining out of the way and picked it up. It still felt cold, like a little piece of never-melting ice. It wasn't any larger than the palm of my hand. The crescent moon etched onto it took up most of the shard, although bits and pieces of it were missing around the edges due to the irregular shape of the fragmented armor. Two of the edges came together to make a rather acute angle. When I curled my fingers around it, I noticed that the edges weren't too sharp. It felt similar to a thick butter knife. "Hunter!" I snapped out of my daze and stared at Twilight. "Did you even hear a single word I said?" she demanded. Yeah," I quickly lied, stuffing the shard in my overcoat's pocket. I dived to the window and grabbed the rope. "Let's get this over with," I muttered under my breath. I took a step onto the windowsill and peered over the edge. Applejack was waiting patiently at the bottom. When she glanced up and saw me, she gave a friendly wave. I half-heartedly returned the gesture before turning my attention back to Twilight. "And you're absolutely certain this thing will support me?" I asked, lifting up the makeshift rope. "Absolutely," Twilight nodded. "I magically enhanced the strength of the bindings. The rope could support the weight of a bear if we needed it to." I weakly nodded in understanding and turned back around. The sheer height seemed to take my breath away. To think that I was one step away from falling was nerve-wracking. My hands had a death grip on the rope. I realized that I was shaking nervously and tried to calm myself. "If it will make you feel better, I can go with you," Fluttershy offered. She gently flew up to my side. "I mean, if you're worried that you might fall, I can fly by you just in case. I promise I'll catch you if you slip." "That would be nice," I commented. "Yeah, I'd like that." I glanced back down to the courtyard where Applejack was waiting and forced my paranoia down. Alright, let's cut a trail. Almost right off the bat, I required her assistance. I had absolutely no experience in rock climbing or wall scaling or whatever the heck I was trying to do. Fluttershy hovered behind me as we descended, resting her forelegs against my back the whole time. Anytime I lost my footing and fell, which was more often than I would have appreciated, she was there to catch me, just like she said. The moment my feet hit the ground, I collapsed onto my hands and knees, sweating from all the near-death experiences. "That settles it," I breathed. "I am never doing anything like that again for the rest of my life." "I think I'm okay with that," Fluttershy panted next to me. 4 orange legs sprouted out of the ground before me. My eyes followed them up until the rest of Applejack came into view. "Howdy, partners," she greeted with a smile, tilting her Stetson slightly. "Glad to see you all can make it." "I'm glad we made it alive," I muttered. "Oh, we all didn't do too bad," Applejack said dismissively. She leaned her head up to the tower and called, "All right, Twa, they're down safe and sound. We're all waiting on you." I slowly rose back to my feet and placed a hand over my beating heart in an attempt to calm it down. As we waited on Twilight to descend, I took the opportunity to reorient myself with my surroundings. 4 structures lined the perimeter of the courtyard, enclosing it in a rectangular shape. A colonnade spanned the path of the far inside walls, but left the wall of the spire behind us bare. The structure to our right eclipsed the moon, leaving over half the area in shadows. A tall, ornate fountain lay directly in the center, bone-dry from over 1,000 years of disuse. The structure to our left was very large, probably rising to at least half the height of the spire. 5 tall stained glass windows lined its wall just above the colonnade. I had been in that building only once before, just to peek inside to see what was there. It was a ballroom the last time I saw it, but this time it was about to be our escape route. Four hooves struck the ground behind me, signaling Twilight's presence. When I turned around, I saw her staring at the rope with her back towards me. The tip of her horn began to glow, and with a simple jerk of the head, the entire rope was severed and launched away from the tower. "That should buy us some time," Twilight commented. She turned around and took in the courtyard. "You said you know the way out of here?" she asked me. "Yeah, I got the whole route mapped out in my mind," I said. "Then what are we waiting around here for?" Applejack asked. "Let's get a move on. Lead the way, Hunter." With that, we were off. I took the lead as we dashed directly across the courtyard to the other side. Once we were under the colonnade, I took a sharp left to the ballroom, and the mares were quick to keep up. A single wooden door greeted us as we reached the end of the corridor. Rusty hinges creaked and groaned in protest as we burst through the door. Once the three mares rushed inside, I quickly slammed the old door shut. The ballroom was large and longer than it was wide. The room could have easily engulfed two of Ponyville's town hall. The stained glass windows distorted the moonlight that entered the room, coloring the room in eerie shades of blue, reds, greens, and purples. Other than the door we just entered, there was only one other exit in this room, which happened to be on the exact opposite side from where we were. I didn't have to tell the mares that little fact, though, as they could already see it. They rushed across the room as I shut the door. I had to sprint to keep up with them, and even then I struggled. When the three mares stampeded across the middle of the room, a low rumble sounded beneath our feet. We all came to a dead stop and stared at the ground. The ominous noises persisted, even in our stillness. I thought I could feel the ground shaking under my feet. Actually, I did feel the ground shaking. "Oh, I do not like this," I murmured. Please tell me that what's happening isn't what I think is happening." A small crack formed on the floor between me and the mares and quickly grew. The crack snaked across the floor, occasionally sprouting new branches that created their own distinct paths. The floor lurched a few inches downward underneath me. "Every pony, run!" Twilight screamed. Nobody needed to be told twice. Not wanting to waste another precious second, we bolted to the other side of the room where the exit awaited. The air was filled with the sound of crashing rock as the ground crumbled all around us. I didn't dare to look behind us to check on the progress of the expanding hole. I was far enough behind the others as it was, and checking would simply slow me down. Besides, the sensation of the floor giving away underneath my feet was more than enough of a motivator to keep me running. In the midst of all the chaos, my mind struggled to comprehend anything as the instinctive I have to run overpowered any other thought. Chunks of the floor began falling beneath us as we ran, creating new obstacles at random intervals. I managed to catch up to Twilight at least. Applejack and Fluttershy were doing surprisingly well. Thanks to her athleticism, the farm pony easily maintained a quick, steady tempo and speed. Whenever a hole suddenly spawned in front of her, she easily cleared it with a single leap without missing a beat. The Pegasus eventually gave up on her legs and resorted to utilizing her wings instead. I don't think I ever saw Fluttershy fall as fast as she did in that moment of havoc. I wasn't sure why Twilight didn't simply teleport to the other side. Perhaps, like me, her mind was panicking too much to think clearly. Unfortunately for both of us, however, her magical instincts happened to kick in right when they were needed. I was still a few paces behind Twilight, the exit dead ahead of me and the earth crumbling at my heels. Out of nowhere, the floor fell right in front of Twilight. She had too much momentum to come to a full stop, and she didn't have enough time to make a quick turn. My mind couldn't comprehend it. One moment she was there, and the next she wasn't. The cavity seemed to have swallowed her whole. I probably should have done something, or at least have reacted, but all I could think to do was avoid the ongoing hole in the ground. I barely even noticed a purple flash and small pop. As I was skimming along the edge of the hole, another flash of purple erupted before me, depositing a purple unicorn directly in my path. There wasn't enough time for my brain to register the newly spawned Twilight, and by the time we collided, it was too late. She didn't stand a chance. I had plowed right over her. It didn't take too much effort on my part. She was half my size, after all. That's not to say that the collision didn't take its toll on me. I stumbled over Twilight, lost my balance, and fell. We both ended up sprawled across the floor. Our shocked eyes met for a short second. Then the floor gave way beneath us. Our entire fall was spent screaming in fear, which didn't last for too long, thankfully. I wasn't exactly sure how long I expected this for our fall to last, but I didn't complain when we hit the level 10 feet beneath the ballroom floor. Unfortunately, the ride was not yet over. The ground was cracking again under us, ending our little resting period and sending us down another floor. I had the misfortune of landing on my rear. The impact jarred my senses, but other than that and a little dust in my lungs, I was fine. The rumble slowly died down. The air was filled with settling dust, making it hard to make out any shapes. I covered my mouth with a hand, hoping not to inhale any more than I already had. Twilight's form soon became visible. "Well," she coughed, "that wasn't near as bad as I expected." "Twilight! Hunter!" Applejack's voice shouted. "I can't see you. Where are you? Are you all okay?" "I'm fine," Twilight called back. She coughed again, and she accidentally breathed in some dust. "I'm fine. Just a few bruises. Nothing to worry about. We fell through a couple of floors, but I think we're safe now." "What about Hunter?" Fluttershy called. "Is he okay?" "Well, I'm not going to sit right for the next few days," I announced while rubbing my sore rear, "but other than that, I'm A-okay." When the dust had finally settled, I craned my neck up to see Applejack and Fluttershy. They were both still safe on the ballroom floor, much to my relief, and peering over the edge to get a better view. Applejack shook her head. "That's it. I'm going down there." She prepared to jump down to the next level, but Twilight cut her off. "Wait, Applejack! You don't have to do that. You and Fluttershy need to get out of here as fast as you can. The Timberwolves were bound to have heard that crash. Hunter and I will try to find another way out and meet up with you as soon as possible," she explained. "Do you know where to go?" Applejack scratched the back of her head. "I reckon I might be able to find some way out," she said. "But what if something happens to you two?" "We'll be fine," Twilight assured. "Hunter and I are more than capable of fending for ourselves." The farmer didn't seem convinced. "Don't worry, AJ. We'll try not to kill each other," I said. "Just get out of here before things get hairy." She hesitated at first, but eventually succumbed and turned to Fluttershy. "Alright, Sugar Cube, let's get going. I suppose there ain't no sense in staying here." Before they left, Applejack called out, "Good luck, you two. We'll be waiting on you." I heard the door creak and slammed shut, and just like that, Twilight and I were all alone. I took the opportunity to observe our new surroundings. The room was dimly lit, just barely illuminated by whatever light managed to stretch down from the stained glass windows. Twilight and I were on the top of a large pile of rubble that littered the floor. Bookshelves ran across the walls. Many were barren, but a few still possessed a handful of dusty books and scrolls. I thought I could make out a door on the other side of the room. The rubble shifted behind me. I turned around to see Twilight trying to keep her balance above the tipsy pile of loose rubble. "So, Hunter, now that we're down here, do you think you can find a way back up?" she asked. "Possibly," I answered. I tried to navigate my way off of the pile of rubble and towards the door. The task would have been faster if the loose stone under my feet didn't shift every time I took a step. "Possibly," Twilight echoed. "What does that mean? Don't you know where we are?" She followed my lead to the door. Together, we awkwardly shuffled our way to stable ground. I hesitated, putting a lot of thought into what I was about to say. "I might," I eventually said. I glanced up at the hole and frowned. I don't remember the castle going this far down. Then again, I might have just had a faulty memory at the moment. I'm sure when once we get out of this room and walk around for a bit, I'll remember where to go. "I'm not sure we have enough time to walk around for a bit," Twilight commented. "The noise of that cave-in was sure to have alerted Thorn and his wolves. If they didn't know where we were already, they do now." We hopped off of the pile and landed on sweet, solid stone. I shot another glance back up at the hole. "Well then, we'd better get a move on," I concluded as we marched to the door. The door was adamant and staying closed at first. It took me some time to force it open, and when I did, the sight of the new hole seemed to suck the breath out of my lungs. It was impossible to tell how far it stretched. It could have gone on for an eternity for all I knew. Only the first few feet were clearly visible before the darkness swallowed the corridor. So I poked her head inside and hesitated. A small spark ignited on the tip of her horn and slowly lifted into the air. The unicorn took a few steps into the hall, and the light lazily followed, illuminating her path with its eerie purple glow. "Come on, Hunter," she said as she wandered deeper. "The sooner we find a way out of here, the sooner we can meet back up with Applejack and Fluttershy." I nodded and followed her inside, closing the door behind me. Before it was completely shut, though, I hesitated. "Hey, Twilight?" I whispered.
Yes?
"Do you think they're going to be alright?" I asked. Fluttershy and Applejack. She stopped dead in her tracks, and her neck turned around to face me. She didn't answer right away, but gave me a quick once-over. "I'm sure they'll be fine," she answered. "They can handle themselves. Besides, Thorn isn't exactly looking for them." "Yeah, probably right," I agreed. "I am right," Twilight assured. "They've been through more than you would think. Right now we just need to worry about getting out of this castle." "I hope you're right," I muttered under my breath. I took one last glance behind us at the room we fell in, and closed the door completely. Darcy hinges groaned as they moved against their will. The darkness was quick to consume me as I was sealed in. I turned back to the purple light where Twilight waited. "All right," I said. "Let's get this over with."